All right, guys. Hi, my name is Jasmine Martin. I am a co-founder of Life Health Soul, and I am here to help you guys get clarity and direction in your life. So today I started thinking about the 5 stages of grief, and there's a couple people in my life that are going through a breakup at the moment, and I'm also getting texts and messages from people going through a breakup, and they're like, how do I deal with this? So I started to really think about the 5 stages of grief when you lose a loved one. And then I started thinking how the 5 stages of grief is the exact same 5 stages that people go through when they go through a breakup and need to learn to move on, right? So the 5 stages of grief in total are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. Okay, so first is denial. When you break up with someone or when you're going through grief and lost a loved one, what tends to happen is you're like, no, did that really just happen? Like, did they break up with me? I need closure, right? And then you start kind of living and still texting them a little bit, and you're like, excuse me, we broke up, right? So it becomes a slight dilemma. And this is where denial hits, where everything seems to just be meaningless. Sometimes you go into numbness, and you have this side of grief, but it's like your body isn't used to this yet, right? You're still are thinking about that person and stuff. So you're still like, okay, starting to move forward, but slowly but surely, right? So it's not a complete shock to your system, right? And sometimes if it is a complete shock, it could be overwhelming, right? So that's denial. Anger is a second step. When after a certain point of moving forward, you're like, how can they do this to me? How can they leave? And you start getting angry at the world in general. And you don't take it out normally on that person because most of the time they're not talking to you or they're a lost love, right? So you end up taking it out in the world on whether it be God, Allah, Hare Krishna, your friends, your family, your boss. It don't matter. Your customers coming into your store. So you just get angry at everything and anything, right? And the problem with this stage is that most people hold on to anger, right? They're like, it's the first emotion that you're really feeling again after being numb. So when anger comes along, you're like holding on to the emotion because it's the first emotion that you can feel, right? I hate that person, right? That's the second one. Then it's bargaining. After anger, you start getting anger starts to lead to like, how can they, right? And you start crying and things like that. Bargaining starts happening. Well, what if I would have done this instead? Or you start praying to God and being like, God, if I could just get one more chance with so-and-so person, right? Or you'll start texting them like, I won't do it again. I promise I'll be good this time, right? So that's where bargaining starts to happen. You start begging for another opportunity because you just don't know how to move on. Again, guys, this is the 3rd stage of grief and breakups and moving on. So it's totally normal, right? So some people can get stuck here. Now, the one stage that people get stuck on the most is the 4th stage, which is depression, right? So when depression hits, you start judging yourself, right? Why did they leave me? I guess I'm ugly, right? Or they start saying like, I'm not good enough. I could never be loved. And you start going through this depression stage, blaming it mainly on yourself, full of guilt, full of grief, right? And you're just like, you've lost someone, right? So you don't know how to deal with this. Mind you, depression is a necessary stage of grief, breakups, and moving on. So most people hit depression and they're like, I'm not supposed to be feeling this. The more that you hold on and try to bottle in the depression and say, no, I'm not supposed to be feeling this, is the moment that you're going to be stuck there. And you don't want to be stuck in the 4th stage, right? 4th stage is like frustration, right? You're trying, most people just don't want to go through that. But guess what? The 5th stage of grief, breakups, and moving on is acceptance. So if you don't go through depression, you're never going to get to that acceptance stage and be able to move on. You're going to be stuck on that breakup. You're going to be stuck there looking at their Instagram, looking at their Facebook, being like, oh my God, they're moving on. What about me? And you're going to go through so many different, the 4 stages all over again in a cycle until you hit acceptance, until you accept depression and decide to move on, okay? So acceptance, the easiest way to get there faster is to go through the 4 stages, know them, and just be like, okay, I'm here. I need to get here, so let's focus on that. And one of the easiest way to start moving down that line is having a mantra of no expectations. If you focus, I think I have it right here. If you focus on having no expectations, you're going to be able to move on faster, right? You're going to be like, listen, no expectations. Everything happens for a reason, and you start believing in the universe that you live in. You start surrendering, for that matter, the art of allowing, knowing that this is part of the process, that maybe you've learned your lesson that's necessary from that relationship or that lost one, and that now it's time to start moving on to the next part of your life. Because if you're holding on to this, then you're not going to be able to actually see your destiny, your fate, what's actually supposed to happen. You're going to be holding yourself back. And I had a Rewiring Ourselves Facebook Live a couple days ago, I think it was 2 days ago, where I was mentioning that if you're holding yourself back, you are the only limit you have. You're putting yourself in this little box when it comes to finances, careers, relationships, families, right? So I'm going a little bit more into relationships at the moment. But again, guys, go through your 4 stages until you hit acceptance. Understand that it's part of the process. Don't try to stop yourself from feeling that grief, from feeling that anger. Just go through it. Move forward, right? And that's one of the things. I'm going to a Tony Robbins event soon, and one of the things he does in Unleash the Power Within, I'm not going on that one, but I've gone to it a couple of times. I've also been to Warrior Goddess and done over 3 fire walks at the moment. And fire walks help you to realize that you're moving forward, right? And literally the last fire walk I did, the saying that I said before I got on that fire walk was, I'm moving on, right? So that is the idea that you guys should have, whether it be a fire walk, whether it even be the new moon. We are in the last quarter, so it's time to release, which is why I decided to do this, right? Tonight is the last quarter for the moon cycle. So it's time to release and get used to having a new intention in your life, right? Being able to have a new moon coming up with new intentions and a new idea on what you want for your life, right? Acceptance, guys. This is the stage. Wherever you are in releasing, it is time. All right. So I love you guys. Mwah, mwah. I'm gone. Goodbye.